So today we're back with a series that we sort of started off earlier, which was essentially the 5 big mistakes like different SR Elo ranges make. Today we're going to be talking about Plat players and what the mistakes that they make. So let's sort of just get straight into it. The first thing, as always, like, when you're looking at gold, plat, and I even say low diamond, you're going to run into sort of this like SR range issue. Some people call it Elo Hell. I don't really define it like that. Like you might have heard, like you see in my earlier video. But one of the biggest things with plat is you're going to essentially have people who play again higher than their actual rank. So when you're playing plat, you're probably playing against maybe high plat sometimes, or maybe Smurfs. So you need to realize that when you're playing in this SR, you need to be able to beat like higher SR players. And if you're not able to beat higher SR players, then in all honesty, you probably won't be able to climb. And that's just something you're gonna have to go through. And something else that I've realized as well is your mechanics might be really good, but sometimes you may, mess up with something else. Maybe it's game sense orientation or CDs or, understanding your kit, which we'll talk about, as well as it could be just you're unlucky and, people are leaving games. And that's sort of the thing with RNG you sort of have to beat. But going into mechanics, right? The straight up thing also that I'm not gonna go too much into, but if your mechanics aren't necessarily good enough and you're not getting enough value, you're not getting final blows, you're not getting a lot of hero damage done or heals, and you can always look at sort of the top 10 leaderboard and sort of look at their stats, whether they can look at their hero damage done. You can always look at their heals, and always look at per 10. Trying to write this a little bit neater. But their heals done per 10. And you can look at both of these and other things depending on what your hero is, sort of see like, are you actually matching the same thing that maybe Crimzo or other top players essentially are? Because you should be. You're a lower SR, you should be able to at least do what they're doing or probably even higher. And if you are, then okay, you're probably doing something right. The next thing that I've noticed, right? So if it's not a mechanics issue, it's probably something else. So an overall holistic like role perspective, what I've noticed is sort of supports tend to have this issue of positioning. And normally in gold, you don't really understand where to set up in general, like whether to start a fight, mid fight, whatever, and you sort of make positioning errors in the start of fight, and you sort of die because of that. Whereas in plat, maybe diamond, I've seen that supports tend to not understand what to do mid fight. They don't understand when to walk forward. They don't understand when to take angles. They don't understand just what to do sort of positioning wise mid fight. And a lot of this is because they don't understand their threats. And essentially, you can break down threats into sort of ranged threats. You can do flankers. And then you can also do like close range burst. And it's not too complicated if you think about this, right? If the enemy team has ranged heroes, then you want to play low ground. You can play to anti-LOS them. If you have more resources like, an alt or certain CDs or maybe another support that can give you more resources, you can take space. If the enemy team has flankers, then make sure you have distance from angles so it's harder for them to, hit you. If they don't have range, then maybe abuse high grounds. And if they have close range burst, just play distance. So sort of just like understanding based off what type of threats they have, how to, adjust and basically deal with it. It's like, for example, again, if they have like flankers, you can also just wait till you maybe get the ball to 1 or the ball's dead, then you can walk up more. Or the tracer, force the tracer no recall. Tracer's probably not going to be very aggressive. The next thing is tanks. And this is a big one. Essentially, the damage taken, I'd say, right? Tanks in plat, I've seen, just don't use natural cover. They tend to take a lot of damage and they tend to push when they don't need to. Like they'll be sort of at a corner and they won't use the corner, so they'll just sort of just tank damage, and then they will essentially just start like holding their shield up, and no one's walking, so the shield just starts getting blown up, and then they actually walk, and then they have no shield and they just die, right? Or they take a bunch of damage and they expect you to heal them. So if you're a tank player, right, in plat, you should really look at your damage taken and actually sort of like think about like, hey, like, do I actually need to be like an open space right now? Can I play this corner, right? In general, you should be playing corners to corners or abusing like anti-LOS, so you can like anti-LOS like massive like range threats or spam threats, so you take less damage. For DPS, and we'll go into this a little bit more later too when we go look at understanding your kit, and so this is like corners first, is essentially CD usage. And some examples of this is like, and I talk about this all the time, but is like tracers who are using blinks when they are like safe. they're like in an enclosed area, and they're just like blinking through in a closed area that's completely safe, and no one's harming them, and they're just using blinks to rotate when they could just simply walk and then save the blinks for the engage. Or maybe an Ashe not saving their coach gun to peels, or an Echo using like shift off CD, and if they keep using their shift to fly, and then they don't have it when they need it to maybe peel, then that could be a problem. Or maybe like the Echo is not landing on high grounds and abusing that. So that's a bit more understanding a kit thing, but sort of these small little things that like you should know from like really understanding your hero and understanding what the CDs are used for. So, and this sort of goes into understanding your kit. So with understanding your kit, the way I look at this is you should really understand all your CDs and your ultimates, and sort of a very basic understanding of what it's used for and how you can deny the enemy team with it. For instance, if an enemy team has a Hog and you have an Ana, you should look to maybe nade Hog, or maybe look to save sleep for the Hog, or maybe the enemy team has a Pharah and you're D.Va. So maybe you should look to his D.Va, you should maybe look to DM like every other shot. That way, your team can't get necessarily one tapped. Or what's another example? Another example could be like let's say there's an enemy team is a Hog again, and maybe like they're looking for hooks. So you need to make sure that you're able to DM the hook, or maybe look to bubble the hook. Bubble like the person who gets hooked. Like small things like this, right? Where you're sort of like understanding that, hey, I need to save this CD for this to deny the enemy team, or I need to save this CD to get more value, for myself. That will help a lot. Next one I want to go into, and this is a big one, is map-based hero selections. So normally, again, I'm all for, we've talked about it maybe in the gold one, where it's like, if you're a player who is really strong at a hero, and you can carry with that, that's like you should definitely go for that. But if it's not working, and maybe the team value is not happening, then maybe look to get something that you can still do a lot of value with, but like you can give value more to your team. But there are certain selections that like inherently are just going to be really, really rough, right? So for like instance, like let's say you're playing like a really like long map, like maybe like Dorado, and you're playing like Moira. So this is a long map, plus it's also a map with like high ground. Inherently, yes, I know Moira can like jump up, but inherently Moira is going to struggle here. So this is probably an example of like probably not the best pick, and it's probably going to lead to you probably not doing as well as you could. Another example you could say, so now we talk about long maps or like on high ground maps, maybe you talk about like an enclosed map, right? Or like really short and maybe you're playing like Widow here, right? Playing Widow like a sniper map that's normally like a sniper hero that's meant for like long based maps is not going to work on really an enclosed short map. I mean, you could pop off, but it's going to be hard, right? Moira is more meant for enclosed areas, like somewhere like Lijiang Control Center, where people are bunched up together. You can heal everybody. It's going to give yourself a lot of value. So understand sort of based off the map, like does the hero I'm like choosing, does it actually like make sense? And based off that, you can sort of go from there. The next one is comp-based hero selection, and when I go into this, I want to like again be sort of like you don't need to be super hard on yourself. Like, oh, I have a Reinhardt, I need to play D.Va. Oh, I have a Winston, I must play I must play, I don't know, Zarya for double bubble, right? No, you don't need to do that. Like I understand people are essentially going to play to their strengths and play to what they can carry and whatnot, and maybe a little bit of the map. But like for instance, there are certain things that are just like really weird. For instance, if you like a lot of brawl based heroes and then you're running something like Mercy, for instance, that's a little weird, right? Like everyone's like really brawly, like you're sort of playing together, and all of a sudden you just have a Mercy. A little weird. Or maybe like everyone's playing together and you sort of have a Pharah without like a pocket. That's also going to be really weird. Or in Dive, for instance, maybe you're playing Dive and you have a Mei. That's just like really out of position. Or maybe you have a Winston plus Sigma. Like again, it's sort of bizarre. Like it's gonna be really hard for your team to keep you up, as well as like like one of these two just don't make sense, and it's just not gonna work well because they can't support each other really well, and your team's sort of gonna be confused. Like, how do we work with this? Like, Winston's gonna jump in or walk to hopefully walk up and then jump out. I hope in this combo because you don't have nothing helping you hold space, so it's better you walk up and then you jump out. But yeah, it's gonna be really awkward, especially in lower SR. Most Winston players don't know that they're supposed to walk up sometimes and then like hold space and then jump out instead of most likely they'll just jump in and then just die. So May, Winston Sigma. Another example would be maybe like a Junkrat. Again, like a very spam based hero and a dive doesn't make sense. I'm gonna go from here, so it's a little bit cleaner. In spam, what if you were playing in spam? You were playing Moira. Imagine if you're like Moira in a spam based composition. Like you're just like constantly healing your team, but your team is playing really slow and you want to play fast. Doesn't make sense. Or maybe you played Reaper, or lastly maybe like Orisa Winston. And I know some teams I've in scrims, I'm not going to say which ones, but maybe my few friends of mine play some Orisa Winston and they get it to work. But you know, I'm just saying in comp, it's going to be inherently really hard, you know, to pull off. And I'm not going to go into hybrid comps because that's, you know, hybrid comps and it's a mixture. But hopefully you're sort of understanding what I'm saying, that like there are certain heroes that like if you see like your team playing like 4 types of things that sort of go in brawl, that like if you choose a hero, it's just like so out of sync that it's inherently just going to be really rough. So, you know, you need to be careful with your, you know, hero selections based off comp as well as hero selections based off map. So if you're messing this up, this could inherently just cause you to like lose. And then lastly, I sort of wanted to go into understanding like your like the sort of like people's kits and sort of their role, I guess, or like what I guess the better way of wording this is like attributes. I think it's really important to have a basic understanding of like how you can break down Overwatch sort of as like Overwatch heroes on like a fundamental level. And this is sort of how I look at stuff when I'm analyzing. So for example, like if I have a comp that like plays a lot together, I preferably want something with area of effect heals. Or maybe I want, you know, if I need something that has direct heals, like is able to do range, right? Then maybe I'll look at something like Ana, for instance, dive. Like my Winston's going in really far. I want direct heals. I also want direct damage. Then, you know, I want something that has, you know, distance heals, and I'll look more at this. Or maybe I want something that can like dive with my team and like go really aggressive. Then I'll look at, you know, mobile and look for Lucio. Or maybe I want to play slow and play spam. Then I'll look at something like a slower that's BAP, and people are playing together. Hence, area effect heals would be good. So sort of like based off, you know, what the rest of the team comp is, like I can sort of use these attributes to sort of figure out like what else is sort of needed, and based off that I can choose heroes that will help like suffice. And this is sort of like how I think about stuff when I'm thinking about new compositions that I want to try, or like what a new meta possibly could be, is one way I look at it. And same thing for DPS, right? Like, do you want something close to range, like close damage? Do you want range damage? Like, so example, maybe something like a Reaper versus something like Ashe. For example, I've seen people like try and run Kree on watch point, and that's just going to be super difficult because your fall off range is going to get affected and you're not going to get inherently a lot of value. So you probably want to run something like Ashe, or maybe Hanzo, or maybe Widow, or something else. And constant damage or spam, maybe you have a spam based here, spam based comp, and you want to like play something slower, so you want, you know, spam heroes. And maybe if you go for spam heroes, then you want something that, you know, helps boost, right, or something that gives maybe shields for you, or maybe you want something that splits, and then you can sort of see things that sort of combine together. But that's sort of a step ahead. But hopefully you're sort of understanding that these attributes can sort of help you understand how to fit into the different compositions that are brawl, dive, and spam. So DPS, non-mobile, mobile, you know, mobile being dive, non-mobile might be brawl or spam. And then tank, mobile, non-mobile, same concept, dive or, you know, spam or brawl. And shields, that's for various purposes. Normally have a shield unless you're playing a specific way, like dive or some type of hybrid comp. And then stack or splits, and that's just a play style normally, or again, it's a type of comp, but most comps can be split at a high level, and a lot of off angling and whatnot. And then livable CDs is just something really niche. But yeah, so hopefully this sort of makes sense, right? And the biggest thing, again, I really want to touch up on is like you're gonna run into people who are inherently better than you. That's just something that is going to happen. This is going to happen, and that is like okay. But it's really important that you understand that, like, if you want to climb and you want to get past Plat and you want to hit diamond, you're gonna have to play at probably like a low diamond level. And that's how you're going to hit like a high win percentage. That's how you're going to climb. And obviously the other things, right, that are important as well. Like, do you have decent mechanics? Like, are your stats like pretty good? Like, oh, I forgot to add here, but maybe your deaths per 10. Are you dying too much? What's your KD? Like, look at all your sort of mechanics and make sure that that's good. If that's good, then definitely go in and like saying like, are you like playing stuff that like helps your team? Are you making some of these like core mistakes in your role? Are you like min-maxing your kit to give the enemy team like to put a disadvantage to the enemy team? And are you playing heroes that sort of are just like suboptimal? Like, yeah, you're getting great stats on it, you're doing really well, but it's like suboptimal and it's not giving your team value, so it's like harder for you guys to win. So hopefully this makes sense, and I hope you guys enjoyed. Thanks for watching till the end, and if you enjoyed, make sure to like and subscribe. Thank you so much.